going to start. I'm going to record too, so you might see that again.
Okay, so we have to hit continue, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to start admitting people. So everyone is being admitted right now. We're going to give everyone a second to connect with their audio. People can turn their video on if you want to. And we're just going to take 1 minute to make sure more people can get into the room. And you can see we've already got about 138 people, so thank you all for being here with us on this lovely Friday. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Marnie Smith. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Career Services at the Marxe School. You'll also see my colleague, Suzanne, who's waving her hand right now. She is the Deputy Director of Graduate Career Services and Alumni Relations at the Marxe School. We are so glad to have all of our guests from our consortium partners here, as well as our lovely speakers, who I will let introduce themselves. We're going to start out with a brief poll. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll that will pop up on your screen. Can we see the poll?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So for the students and alumni here, we're going to ask you to fill out 3 quick questions about whether you're grad student, undergrad, alum, and then what degree you have or what you're working towards, and then whether you're most interested in roles at UN, UNFPA, and UNICEF in New York, or internationally, or both. So I'm just going to give everyone a few more seconds. I see the numbers going up rapidly. And then I'll share the results with everybody. So, okay. Still going. Okay. It looks like, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll so we're conscious of time. I'm going to share the results. Can we see the results?
Yes.
Okay, so we can see that 85% of our attendees are grad students. The vast majority, 12%, are graduate alums. We do have some undergraduates representing in the House. Thank you. What kind of degree are we all working towards, or do we have? It looks like MPA or MPP is the winner with 26%. We've got 20% for MSMA, and other is 24%. So we've got a nice mix of folks in the room. So I will stop sharing this, but it's good that we know who's here. And we're going to get started with our presenters. So we're going to start with our lovely presenters, Eva and Joan from the UN Secretariat. If you are able to introduce yourselves and just tell us your title. I'll also put this in the chat for everyone. And Joan and Eva, I will please let you take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Marnie and Suzanne, for organizing this. And it's really great to see the audience, everybody at home. Very nice. You can see I'm also at home. I have a cat on my lap and another one that might pass by from time to time. I work for the UN Secretariat. I am currently in charge of what is called Staffing, Diversity and Outreach section in the Office of Human Resources. I'm from Austria. I have worked in, I think, 6 duty stations. I've been in New York for 10 years in various positions in HR. My background is actually not HR. I was once upon a time a human rights expert. And I think, one of the questions I have here on my list is what makes working at your organization a unique experience. For me, the unique experience was very often that I could progress into new areas, I could shift functions, I could learn new things and pick the positions that I thought at that time were the most appropriate for me. So I think this is something that you will not find easily in the private sector or other areas of the public sector. So going into the first question, tell us about your agency, including mission, scope of work, and number of offices. So you know the Secretariat is rather a political body, and in general the UN is responsible for peace and security. But I would say that the UN in general is a little world on its own, and in order to achieve our goals and the mandates that are set by the General Assembly, we need actually people who work in all areas of expertise. So most people don't understand that apart from the political side, we need to keep up life that is running everywhere around the globe in the various duty stations we have. So we always look for administrators, like, you know, HR people, procurement, supply chain. We also look for security all over, security specialists in any area you could imagine, like, for example, the Office on Drugs and Crime, cybersecurity, and transnational organized crime, those things. Then we look for teachers because our staff needs to develop. So we always look into the various learning programs that are there. We look for substantive experts like biologists, physicists, physics, chemists. Joan is laughing. And many other areas. So usually when I talk about my job within my own organization and I tell them, did you know that we are looking for makeup artists because we have a TV studio. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about the UN TV station. Even my colleagues are astonished that we have all these jobs that we need to fill, and very often people are not aware of it. So that's a quick overview of the organization, the hiring process. The question is here, are you actively hiring now? We do, but it has slowed down a little bit because of the circumstances. But related to that, the next question talks about remote internships. And yes, we do that. We really look actively for interns who can work with us for the time being on a remote basis. But once the situation has re-established itself, then obviously also for local interns, international interns, internships in the UN, you can do them all over the world. So you pick the duty station, you pick the field of expertise you would like to explore the UN in. And before I hand over to Joan, because I see my time is almost over, just to advertise, our office is at the moment looking for user design interns, graphic design interns, and interns who have specialized on disability inclusion and gender mainstreaming. So that's it for now, but I'm really happy to answer any other question later on. Thank you, everybody. And Joan, over to you.
Thank you, Eva. Hi, everybody. My name is Shaun Appler. I'm part of the outreach team at the UN, which is part of the Office of Human Resources in New York, United Nations. And I've worked in the UN for many years. I would say 30 years, actually. I celebrated my 30th anniversary last year. And I've had a wonderful career. Actually, you guys would know, I'm a Baruch College graduate. I graduated from Baruch many years ago. And so I was very happy when I heard Baruch doing a webinar, and I was very happy. I said to myself, oh my God, I'll be very happy to be joined. So I'm happy to be here and welcome everybody. My area of work during the UN, my UN career has been in the field of administration primarily. The UN being such a big area, a big organization, it doesn't feel like I've been in one place, even though I've spent my entire career at the UN. So that's a big plus. In the field of administration, I've worked in budget, I've worked in payroll tax, I've worked in benefits and entitlements, personnel, human resources, and as a recruiter. I was a recruiter for the UN for many years up until last year when I joined the outreach team. So UN career is very good. Today, I want to talk to you about entry points in the UN. There are several, but because we have limited time, I'm going to talk about two, and then hopefully, let's see, maybe we can add more. The general service level. Most people don't think of the general service level as a way of entering into the UN. However, It is an excellent opportunity to be able to enter the UN as someone without experience and not sure where they want to be. You know, they're not sure, they're testing the waters to see if even the UN is where they want to be working at. So the UN advertises a lot of general service positions on temporary level. And normally officers have different projects, events, even the General Assembly. I came in through during the General Assembly where we would hire up to 100 people. So that's a good way to enter the UN. And when you come in, you get a chance to gain experience. You get a chance to network. You get a chance to get to know people and get a feel for how the UN is. It's very easy to come in for your level, young people. High school diploma is all you need. Don't panic. That's not really where your career is going to be. It's just a way to get in the door, if you know what I mean. So you can build, you can sort of find a way to move up. So there's this entrance exam called GGST, which is high school level. You can pass it very easy. Basic minimum 3 years, and then once you come in, you get to work on projects, get to know people. Another way of coming in is the YPP, which is a Young Professional Program. I'm going to talk to you about that because I actually participated in that. I came in as a GS and then was a successful candidate in the Young Professional Program and was able to develop my career that way. So whether you're in the UN or outside, you could still participate in the Young Professionals Program. It's no experience necessary. Once you pass, you can just start your career as a young professional on an international level and be able to, you're supported with professional development, you're mentored, you get a chance to build a career as an international civil servant. The eligibility requirement, there are member states within the UN staff population, a lot of member states that do not have representation or underrepresented or don't have enough staff represented in the UN. And so for this group, I would say every year it fluctuates where you're around 70, 75, it changes, but it's a large group of countries who don't have representation. So for this group, we organize this exam. So if you're a member of that national, if you're 32 years or younger, the exam is given every year, 32 years or younger. If you speak English or French, and you have a minimum first degree in the field subject field where you want to apply, you'll be eligible to apply. We start promoting it around April, May, and then the job openings are advertised in June. And then of course you prepare and the exams are given online in December. And so this is an excellent way to come in. The exam has 3 parts. You have the general paper, you have the specialized paper, and of course you have the oral exam. The general paper tests your fundamental skills to be able to work in an international organization in the area of communication and drafting skills, written communication and drafting, and also your abilities in the area, your core competencies in diversity and in respect for diversity and integrity, your integrity. The specialized paper, of course, tests your substantive knowledge in the field, subject matter field where you are taking the exam. And it measures how you're able to use your knowledge to analyze real life work problems. And so you have to be able to apply what you've learned in school to sort of solve real life issues. That's the way the exam is. You have to be very good in your writing and drafting skills. To be able to write professionally for this exam is very important. And so we do study the different ways to learn about the YPP, the tips. We have our careers website, which is the careers.un.org. We also have our careers website where in detail, you can get detailed information about the YPP program. Another way to get in, you can come in if, let's say, your country does not participate. It's not in the underrepresented group. You can come in as a volunteer. There are 3 types of volunteers, which is we have the standard volunteers if you're 25 years or younger or older. We have the youth volunteers, which is between 18 and 29. And also we have the online volunteers. All these are areas where students can participate and sort of gain experience and work for the UN in different areas. You can also be a consultant where if you have some kind of expertise to work on a project in reports, you can do give advice on certain things. These are all ways where you can gain experience and work for the UN. So in June, when we advertised this YPP, going back to the YPP, or any job opening, whether it's a general service or any job at the UN, you go to our careers website and create a profile, which is our version of the resume. It's called the PHP, Personal History Profile. Create your application and then search for the job you're looking for and apply. I don't know if we have time to share a screen. I can show you the careers website on my PowerPoint here. Here. So this is the careers website, what it looks like. If you go to this area, you would have the job networks. If you click on this link, career paths, you can see all the job, all the entry points that you can enter and be able to find any information you need. This is where you search for job openings. It's my time up. And one quick tip, when you're applying for job openings in the UN, be very careful in the area of education. Review the job opening very well. And in the area of education, work experience, and languages, read the job opening well. And when you fill out your application, make sure what is required in these areas is captured. Otherwise, the system automatically screens you out and your PHP or your application never makes it to the hiring manager. So this is very important. And I think my time is up, I believe, Eva. Yes. And it is, right? So follow us on Facebook and go to our careers portal to get more information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. And I flipped through the questions that came in between, and just one or two comments. Degrees. So for the YPP, you need only a bachelor's degree.
A bachelor's degree, yes.
With no work experience. And the Secretariat in general, to apply for what we call professional positions, a bachelor's degree is enough with the relevant work experience, while in some of the agencies, a master's is already required. And that will maybe lead me to the next speaker who can talk more about what's going on in their organization. Who's the next on this list?
Hi everyone. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. My name is Lushana Akhtar for United Nations Population Fund. So you can call me Lou if it makes it easier. And for those of you who don't know the UN Population Fund, I'll just show this very quick slideshow. So you can still hear me speaking, but then you can also see my screen, and then I can take questions afterwards. So here we go. This is our job site, which is United Nations Population Fund, and the acronym is UNFPA. So it's a little different, but that is how we work. And a couple of the things that is very useful on our job site is that if you went to About UNFPA, you could learn more about what the organization does. And then, of course, if you're interested in jobs, you would go here to click on jobs. What I've done is I've already preloaded the page. For those of you who are interested in internships, let's say, the internship program in headquarters is a rolling internship process where it's open all year long because we take applicants, and what we do is we create a pool, and then any of our offices, not just headquarters based, can take a look at the applicants list and see where it is that they could match needs of their office to the intern application. So it's a general open application. Please, if you're interested in an internship opportunity, whether in New York or anywhere else, you can click on the link and apply and put in your information, and it creates a roster. So just to pop in also at the same time, UNFPA leaves a very useful resource open to everyone, which is just a general public. It's called a career guide for UNFPA staff members. And even though it says staff members, it's literally the Bible for career at UNFPA. You could go in there and you can look at any question you might have, whether it's for how to fill out your CV, basically, which is our P11, or how to, apply and what you should include, which questions you may have. any questions that you can have. I have already opened up the career guide, and if you wanted to take a quick look, it's a PDF. It's only about 30 pages, but it's very content heavy. So opportunities for career development, how to have a holistic career. And I don't want to, take up my whole 15 minutes to say everything in here, but it also works with you as an individual candidate to see where you could work in the UN system, not just within UNFPA, because we as the UN system, generally speaking, hire, as my colleagues previously mentioned, in so many different categories that you wouldn't even expect. We have hired a makeup artist, for example, before for our advertising. And so depending on your particular interest and what you might be thinking of going towards, this is the area for writing your CVs and cover letters. So any questions you might have, this is what we share with our staff for their support. So it's actually very useful for interviewing tips as well, references, and it's open to the public. I encourage everyone to do it. Separate conversation, but not on an unrelated matter. UN volunteers is a great way to get into the UN system. I know because I work in partnership on the partnership between UNFPA and UNV. So if you think about it as an American, if you were thinking of supporting, if you want to go to a different country and support somewhere, or if you want to get a different experience, or if you want to just support remotely, you could sign up for the UN volunteers. They have every category where you could be a young person, you could be a more experienced person, you could be supporting from a distance, you could be supporting in person. And what they do is they cover your expenses if you are traveling for them, but they don't provide a salary, but they give you this great opportunity to experience and support, and of course to give back. So if I were to highlight anything for UNFPA in terms of website, of course our general website, where you can also find out the jobs, internship program, the career guide, which I also opened, and then the UN volunteers page. So I'll just get out of there and share a little bit about what UNFPA does, because I know I didn't really cover that at the beginning. So population fund, the thing that makes us most popular around the world is our population report. It's basically a census for the entire world. And if you think about it, anytime a government or anyone wants to do any kind of planning, they kind of have to know, oh, how many people do they have at what age categories? What are the needs of that government or that organization or in that place? And so what UNFPA specifically concentrates on, aside from the population itself, is pregnancy and safe birth. Basically, we have a lot of midwives that in field offices we hire and employ because we are working to support pregnancy and the safe delivery for women when they're having babies, and that if the childbirth process is safe. Another category we concentrate on, which relates to population as well, is young people and having the opportunity to have their potential fulfilled. So it seems like a very generic thing. Every young person's potential is fulfilled, every childbirth is safe, every pregnancy is wanted. But there are many things in that area when you think about it that we may be sitting in New York, we have access to, whether it's contraceptives, whether it's information that is available to, resources that is available to other people, but not to us, not to everyone in the world. So it helps in that sense to just introduce what UNFPA does. And I'll just quickly go through one area that I wanted to share. So we covered this kind of supporting family planning, helping getting everyone counted, as well as HIV, which I didn't mention. So if you didn't have the opportunity to know some of the things that UNFPA has accomplished, we've helped with saving lives in the sense that avoiding maternal deaths. So it's not like we have so much time here to go through everything, but if you had questions and were interested in supporting a cause that is basically everyone's born from someone, right? So you have a mom, you understand the process of that you would want every childbirth to be safe and everyone to have the opportunity to have access to contraceptives, and also grow up the opportunity to fulfill their potential. So these are some of the areas that UNFPA works in. And I will stop sharing my screen and back to the questions. Give me one second. Okay. So can you see my face again?
Oh, we're still seeing your screen.
Oh, okay. So let me get out of here. maybe you can do it at your end.
Oh, let me see. Suzanne, do you want to start taking questions while I see if
I'm happy to take questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Lou, one of the questions, and actually I think these were coming up before, is just sort of the timeline for hearing back. And I think it's a frustration a lot of people have when they apply for any position at the UN or one of the UN agencies, is the sense that they never hear back. You know, like someone said they'd applied for an internship at UNFPA and just never, you know, haven't heard anything for a long time. What can people do? You know, can you give us a sense of the quantity of applicants for one position? Like, what can people do to, what's happening on the back end, on your end, as far as applications, and why might that be that, you know, people are not hearing back? And what would give them a stronger chance of hearing back?
Well, I think Joan highlighted some of these areas very well.
Yes.
So I would always recommend to be taking a close look at the vacancy announcement. One of the things that's often mentioned is this number of years of work experience. And a lot of people, when they're listing their work experience, they fail to take into account how many years they've actually listed, because often, let's say you're starting in a job in June, you're finishing 2 years later, but you're not listing it appropriately that, yes, I started in June 2014 and I'm working until 2017. So to make sure that if they ask for 5 years of job experience, you put that in specifically. If they ask that a particular degree requirement was there, you make sure that you clearly highlight that that is the degree that you have, that whether it's at the master's level or the bachelor's level, that you completed your degree with the graduation year, because these things are software in the back end when the applications are received, and you can often get filtered out because you didn't meet the basic requirements. So people aren't specifically looking at your application. It's a software taking it out before you've had the opportunity to, you know, share your cover letter and have it be read.
Okay, so you're saying some of it is the applicant has to be very careful when actually filling out the application itself.
Yeah, and a couple of areas I would highlight. So let's say your application is actually looked at and you've made it through that basic requirements process. In cover letters, I often see that it's been my dream to work for the UN. And that's fabulous. We want you to work for the UN, right? Because that means that you're enthusiastic. But you have to take it one little bit step further and think, saying I want to work for the UN is very similar to saying I want to work in accounting. Okay, you want to work in accounting, but there's so many different areas in accounting. There's so many different companies that you could work for, and within the UN, same as it's the same situation. You could work for the World Food Program, you could work for the United Nations Population Fund, you could work for UNICEF. There are many choices. So just do that little bit of research further to say, I want to work for this particular cause, not just the UN, but because of the mandate, because what the organization stands for, to highlight the fact that you actually know where it is that you're applying to. And you might realize that, hey, it does make you more interested in working.
And then you had highlighted the volunteers. There was a question about, is that rolling, the volunteers? And also, if you do a volunteer role, does that strengthen your ability to get a different full-time or other kind of role in the UN? Was that kind of why you were highlighting that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I myself started as an intern while I was studying at Baruch, getting my master's, my MBA in international business and human resources. And I came across this opportunity through that because I was an intern and then I came on as a consultant. But my former director for human resources, which is where I work, he came through UNV. He started his career as a UN volunteer, which means that you're not getting paid, but your basic needs are being taken care of if you take on an assignment somewhere else. But it's an entry point that people don't often consider, but they should consider, because it's like joining the Peace Corps as an American. It's a way to give back, get a different experience, and you're getting very relevant experience at that. It's UN experience, which will be counted because it gives you more in-depth knowledge and an opportunity to get field experience and international experience.
Great, got it. I think we'll hold on the questions now and move to the next speaker.
Suzanne, can I maybe add 1 or 2 points?
Sure.
Thank you. I have a son who is 20 and his friends are looking for internships. And I've seen more often than not that they apply through LinkedIn, dozens and dozens of applications, and there is no feedback. And it has nothing to do with the UN. You know, you apply to companies and it's the same thing. Nobody ever hears back from them. And in the end, very often, somehow they get into an internship because their parents know somebody. And I would like to point out that this doesn't work in the UN. So I really want to make it very clear that if you don't get accepted or if you don't hear back, it is not because you don't have an uncle in the government or a friend in the UN or something like this. I think what for many managers is important when they see an application is that it shows a certain maturity. And I can tell you from personal experience, when I receive internship applications, I would say maybe 80% of them have grammar and spelling mistakes, and I don't consider any of those. So it's really the little things that make a difference. And another question here that came up was, is the process in headquarters more competitive than in other duty stations? I think there are three things that you should consider. One, temporary jobs are much less competitive than regular positions. And very often you start in a temporary position, which is temporary for various reasons. And then you move on and on into other temporary positions and eventually a fixed term contract. Two, yes, the duty station makes a difference. Some duty stations that are considered as comfortable receive more applications. And then three, it's the field of expertise. So I think the highest number of applications we in the Secretariat get in the area of political affairs, while, and this is actually my job, we have a lot of positions, a lot of them, where we don't receive enough applications and we don't receive enough applications from qualified candidates. So if I tell you now, somebody asked for the number of applications. If I tell you now that in average, maybe we receive 400 applications, that does not mean anything because a lot of those applications are not from qualified candidates. So I would never look into, does it make sense for me to apply? Because after all, you might be the best qualified person. So no matter what the competition is, go for what you want and where you feel you can make a difference. That is important. And that is also what the hiring manager will go for. That's it. Thanks.
Let me add a quick tip. If I may add a quick tip to the application process, the area of languages is where a lot of people make mistakes where if let's say the job opener is requiring fluency in English, and of course we're looking for fluency in the area of speaking, writing, understanding, and reading, right? And so if you're fluent in that, make sure you select fluency in all 4 areas. Otherwise you'll be screened out. So that's a common mistake that people make. So keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. So let's open it up to Carmen and Eran from UNICEF. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Marnie. Thank you, colleagues, panelists, as well as student and alumni from Baruch. My name is Carmen Munoz. I work as a talent acquisition officer, also human resources officer for UNICEF. I've been with UNICEF for about now 4 years. It's my first UN assignment. I started as a consultant performing benefits and entitlements, and then moved on to do something called international reassignment mobility. I did that for quite some time, and it was great because it gave me a lot of context, and that's where I actually started my first position. So 6 months ago, I now serve as talent acquisition officer, hoping to attract and engage qualified and diverse candidates such as yourself to our organization. In a moment, my colleague Eran will speak to you about the hiring process as well as himself and the application process within UNICEF, but I'll just provide you a quick overview. So UNICEF, for those that don't know, was established back, I believe it was 1946 after World War II, and it was after the famine for European children in those countries. It was to safeguard and defend the rights of children everywhere around the world, and we're still committed to doing that. 70 years later, we're still here hoping to promote the right of children, but not only children, young people as well have become a huge part of our agenda. So we operate in some of the most dynamic multicultural offices, currently 190 offices across the globe, of which 126 are country offices. Many of our actual jobs and positions are within our programmatic areas, and a very short percentage are within our operations fields. What we like is for people to be able to be committed and dynamic in terms of humanitarian rights, and particularly when it comes to safeguarding children's rights. So we look for people that not only meet the criteria of the position, but also are willing to go above and beyond for the call of duty. Besides our work, we've been able to show results in many different areas, programmatic areas such as health and nutrition, such as vaccinations for children worldwide, as well as being able to do social inclusion. Many of our categories and functions now are aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're hoping that for this new quadrennium, we start with a goal of making sure that every child learns, every child is able to be in a safe and clean environment. And despite the circumstances we're going through now with COVID-19, we're hoping that they have an equitable chance to life. So in terms of our mission, we also are very keen on having different types of individuals within our organization. You can start at several entry points, and I'll be happy to outline some of those for you now. And you can also be able to apply to most of our positions through the careers website. So some of the entry point programs we have are our internship programs. As many of our sister organizations mentioned, they're for diverse candidates that want to be able to acquire direct practical experience. In addition to that, we have our senior fellows. This program is a new initiative which we started for people who are a bit more seasoned and would like to be able to provide us with their experience and also share with us their specialization from either public or private sector. This usually is a one-year assignment. It is renewable depending on the areas of work. And some of these areas mainly are for emerging areas, particularly such as innovation, such as field results, and data and analytics. Another program which our colleagues mentioned already are the United Nations Volunteers Program. We partner directly with them in order to obtain many candidates from either entry-level youth to specialists to work all across our country offices and globe. Aside from that, we do have consultancies as well as our temporary and full-time positions. And right now, there's pretty much an abundance and an array of positions throughout all our functional areas. And to explain a bit about the hiring process as well as application process, I'll hand it over to Eran.
Sorry, my name is Eran Schweiger. I'm a business partner with UNICEF. I'm not an outreach person like the others, so I'm not as slick, but I'm gonna go a little bit off script and tell you like it is. First of all, myself, I'm a corporate lawyer in training. I used to work for IPOs and for Merrill Lynch back at the time until I saw the light, and I applied to the UN through the YPP program that was mentioned before, and I joined, what was it, 12 years ago. I joined the Secretariat, got to work in Thailand, Cyprus, etc., all kind of HR and legal jobs. Let's start with, I think it might be a little confusing why we have different people from the UN here. So I think what you need to know about UN agencies is that the UN is a little bit not centralized enough. So this is why we have people here from UNFPA and UNICEF and UN Secretariat, and every agency has its own job board. So unfortunately, until we were able to centralize it, you will have to apply to each agency separately. Right now, there's close to 30 agencies and a lot of little programs. So, I mean, you're definitely going to have to do some research. You're definitely going to have to go on Wikipedia or whatever and understand what each UN agency does and what works for you, and then start applying. So it is some work, but you have to know that if you apply to the Secretariat, for example, it's not going to get to UNICEF and vice versa. So this is important. However, the application process itself is usually quite the same in most of the agencies. There's going to be an online system where you put in your application. This application is going to be reviewed, or what we call long listed, and this can be sometime done with software or with some outside vendors, and they clear out the people that don't fulfill the requirements of the post. So I heard a few times that it's important to mention that you fulfill the requirements of the post, but it's also more important to make sure everything is accurate in your CV. Because if you write that you are proficient in all areas of Spanish and French, in speaking, talking, which is the same, speaking, reading, etc., and we found out that you're not, it can get you even blacklisted for the future. So make sure you're accurate in your CV, but make sure you mention everything with the dates, fill all the fields, because some of these things get automatically screened later. So you apply, it gets online screened, we end up with what we call a long list, and the hiring manager at that point looks at the long list and decides which candidates are most suitable for him. He takes into consideration things like the kind of work they did, the kind of things that are relevant to the specific section, etc. That's called the shortlisting stage. Sometimes there's going to be a written test. If there are a lot of applicants, they want to know exactly who can do what, and we get applications from everyone around the world, and sometimes you have to standardize it a little bit. So we're going to do a written test just to see where everyone stands. So you have long list, short list, and then the assessment stage. As I said, assessment can be writing, can be interview, can be both. And at the end, there are going to be people recommended. So I think this process, give or take with minor changes, applies to all agencies. I wrote a few notes before. Internships. I think it's important to understand that internships are great to get experience and to get your foot in the door. Usually they are not paid. In UNICEF, they are paid. So not that I'm saying that internship is better at UNICEF, but they are paid. So just so you know. Now, how to make it easier for you, and Eva touched it a little bit, and just to be very, very practical. If you are fresh graduates of the university, it will be very hard for you to get a professional post in the UN unless you have previous experience. Even entry-level professional posts require 2 years of experience. Mid-level require 5, 7, 10, and on. So if you're fresh graduate, you have no experience, you have to go to other direction. Like the UNV that was mentioned, like internship, like consultancies. And again, it's very simple. You just go into the job board of the agency or agencies that are suitable for you. You look at the requirements of the post. It's very clear there in terms of years of experience, education, etc. If you're suitable, you can apply. If you're not suitable, there's a good chance you're going to be screened out. So again, if you have the experience, apply. If you're a fresh graduate, go through the UNV internship, consultancies, get your foot in the door, get to know people in the UN. And a lot of consultants and even interns move on in the UN and eventually get this professional international post. I'm looking at my notes. Again, whatever mentioned about application, the rule of big numbers applies. If you apply to a position in Mali or in Juba or in a place that's very hard, A, you're going to be less applicants and it's going to be easier for you to get a job, but B, you're also going to get an extremely special experience, and you start your UN experience with kind of like the down to earth, the core of what we do. And in the case of UNICEF specifically, because our objective is so clear, it's helping the children. When you work in a field office, in a country office, you get to do really great things with children and really make a change. So starting the UN career from difficult location is not only a trick to get in, it's also a way to get very meaningful experience. I'm trying to think if there are other issues. Most international jobs in the UN are subject to mobility. Different agencies treat mobility in different ways. In UNICEF, we are pretty hard on, not hard, but pretty strict with it. So if you want to be international staff with the UN, you have to accept that you will not be able to live in the same place for your whole career. You're going to have to move around, you're going to have to do different jobs and kind of get this like experience. So that's a big thing to consider when you think about starting a career with the UN. Other than that element, a career with the UN is very interesting. It's very international. You work internationally, you travel, you get to do things that are extremely meaningful. So I will definitely recommend it to everyone. And I think that's my spiel. Is there anything I missed, Carmen?
Yeah, how to apply.
Yeah, no, I talked about it. You apply, you just go to the job board of each agency. You look for the posts that are suitable for you, and you can even screen. Most of the job boards have screeners. So you can screen to the level of experience you have into the area you're interested in. You see if there are jobs, and you apply.
No, that part was great. It was the part about our link where you can apply at unicef.org/employment.
Oh, you mean like the self-promotion, the plugin. The plugin, okay. So anyway, first of all, I want to say about UNICEF, just to talk about, as I said, UNICEF has a very clear objective. As someone who worked in a few UN agencies, I can say that UNICEF is a good combination between an agency that is big enough to have a lot of jobs in many places, but also small enough to be very employee-centric. So from my experience in UNICEF, the employees are extremely important and the policies are very forward towards the employees. Now, where is that link, Carmen? Just a second, I missed it.
Well, I can put it in.
Yeah, here. Okay, so yeah, the link is unicef.org employment. And you can probably just write UNICEF jobs in Google and get to the same place.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Just a couple questions for the UNICEF folks, and then we can open things up for questions for everybody. As far as internships, if there's a 6-month, when you intern at the UN, are there any rules around if you'd interned at the UN, do you have to wait 6 months if you're applying for the agency roles? Do you know what I mean? Like, are there...
Yeah, I mean, different agencies have different rules. If I remember correctly, Secretariat is you have to wait. In UNICEF, I think there's a shorter wait time. I can remember right now, but yeah, there are rules about waiting between consultancies and internship and other jobs.
I think, hi Eran, I think what she means is if you do an internship in the Secretariat, can you then apply to the agencies and do not need to wait? And I have to be honest, I'm not sure. But I think you don't have to wait. Like for regular positions from G2P, etc., you don't, if you apply from one agency to the other, you don't have this obligatory waiting period, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I can say for UNICEF that because the systems are so separate, when you apply from another UN agency, you basically apply as external. So it doesn't really matter what you did before.
And why do we do this? It's really just to avoid nepotism. We don't want people to bring in their friends or anything. So this is why a certain distance helps them to be objective again.
And as far as, can you help us understand the consultancies a little bit? I think people are wondering, especially, you know, graduate students here or they're recent graduates from master's programs, are the consultancy roles something that a lot of them will be eligible for, or generally are they the kind of thing where you need years of experience in a niche area?
So it pretty much depends on the type of consultancy, because we have consultancies in different sectors. It can be for programs, it can be for operations, and at different levels of responsibility. So it's very important, again, to check the terms of reference for the consultancy. See if you meet the minimum requirement of those terms of reference, and then from there be able to apply. Consultancies also have different lengths of span of time. So some can be very short term and others can offer about 11 months to a year, depending on budget, of course. So it's important, again, to review the job vacancy announcements.
Okay.
Just to add to Carmen's point, I wanted to say that UNFPA also has a consultancy roster, same as you would find for the internship roster. And I have seen consultants who come on board and they just have a bachelor's degree, because in terms of, you would expect, oh, maybe they need to have a master's in that. It depends on the project that they're working on, the length of the assignment. And the person that I worked with specifically, who had just finished their bachelor's, it was a very technical role that we didn't have an in-house expertise in. And it worked perfectly. So it's not that a consultancy can't work out as just fresh UN opportunity.
Great. Someone's asking the difference between a temporary role and a consultancy. Is there a difference?
Should I answer this?
There's quite a lot.
The difference between consultancies and staff members is that as a staff member, the organization takes care of health insurance, pension, all the benefits that come with a regular position, while a consultant is somebody who just chips in, gets money for the work done, but is not employed really with the organization. And the difference between temporary and regular means that for the Secretariat, positions that usually have a duration of less than a year, we call them temporary positions, and anything longer than a year goes under the term fixed term contract. And they have a little bit different conditions, but you're still a staff member no matter what type of contract you have, whether it's short or fixed term.
Okay, great. For the UNICEF folks, this is a good question. I think people may not understand the difference between UNICEF and UNICEF USA. Can you explain?
Yes, of course. So UNICEF USA is actually the national committee for UNICEF. So UNICEF is the organization that provides the services and all of the direct program-related areas.
So UNICEF USA is an NGO, right, Carmen?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a non-governmental organization. It's not a UN organization.
It's an entirely separate office. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not even part of the UN. That's the important part. So it's not part of the UN family. It's an NGO that works with the UN.
Okay, great. There's a few questions about internships, the likelihood of international internships in light of the pandemic. Thoughts on that? Yeah, Lou?
I can add that. So for UNFPA, we've been discussing this, and in 2020, we also rolled out our stipend process, where we provide stipends to our interns. Our policy right now, because of COVID, is basically that we're all working remotely. None of us are in the office right now. So we will not be having interns in person, but if an intern is interested in supporting for a remote internship, we are allowing that. And this is to factor in, travel, safety, COVID-related complications.
So do you currently have postings up now for internships that are remote?
Our internship process is always rolling, basically open all year long. So if you use the link and you put in your information, a unit that's interested in hiring an intern would reach out to you specifically for that particular internship. So we don't post individual internships here in New York. We don't post each specific internship opportunity. It's just a generic application that you can do. And then depending on the area that a unit is interested in hiring in, they would reach out.
Great. Other agencies in terms of remote internships, is it similar or is it still in process?
So it's almost sorry, Eva. So it's almost the same as Lou in terms of a rolling basis, but we actually have a decentralized process. So our internships are advertised directly by the offices. So we do have them throughout the entire year in different locations. We do not allow remote internships. We prefer that the actual interns be on site for the learning experience as well. But now due to the COVID situation is the only time that we're having everyone work remotely.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we allow remote internships, and it's the only way now to do an internship. But I want to be very honest, looking at my own situation, it is much harder to get things done if everybody telecommutes. So we're already struggling with getting the work done, and an intern typically means a lot of additional time and energy that goes into that person or several persons in the office to teach them, to involve them, to explain, coach, mentor. So I could imagine that a lot of managers, although internship positions are posted, nobody had the time yet to take them off because the situation is evolving the whole time. And in the beginning we thought, in 2 weeks time we will be back in the office, everything will run normally. So now it looks like also in the different countries the situation is very different. my guess is managers have left internship positions open, and the moment they can get a grasp of what is going on, they will contact candidates again and see how they can arrange for telecommuting or in-person internships, depending on the situation in the country.
Great. For international students who are here in the US, can you talk about sponsorship and OPT and those kinds of things for students who want to stay working in the US?
The US government has issued a new policy in September last year saying that everybody who works for the UN, including interns, need to get a diplomatic visa, G4 visa, and that changed a little bit the rules of the game. At the moment, also the US government has limited capacity of dealing with any visa issues. So currently, it's not a question of getting a visa for an intern. I don't think that practically this will work out. We have to wait and see how the situation evolves.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question about diversity. There's a few people who are wondering, you know, how diversity is. I think Eran had said something about nationality and gender were two factors. There's some people concerned about age diversity. Like, how does the UN approach ensuring a diverse workforce? Knowing you're getting tons of applications from, you know, around the world.
Generally speaking, the UN is too old. So we're looking for younger people. There are several strategies being developed and in place in terms of diversity, but they're not uniform across the common system. We have a roof organization, the Chief Executives Board, that tries to mainstream and streamline the various initiatives, but I think it would go out of the frame of this event here to start talking about our diversity initiatives. We have things in place and we are making an effort.
Okay. Let's see. Last minute burning questions from the audience, or for our speakers, is there anything we didn't talk about that you think might be helpful for folks to know?
Yeah, I saw one question that I found interesting because it comes again and again. What are the qualities you look for when you look at applicants? And I think one skill that will make you stand out is languages. So whatever other language you speak but English, it will help you either get in or move in your career. On the one hand, yes, the UN official languages, but then apart from that, other languages always are helpful because you might be in touch with representatives from those countries, or you might we might look for candidates in certain duty stations where this might be helpful. So any language you speak, put it in your application. I think that's important. And I'm sure my colleagues can talk a lot about the strengths we look for. I don't want to kidnap here, they hijack all the talking.
No, you're actually not hijacking the conversation. You're giving us a lot of great insights. So thank you very much. As Eva mentioned, Lou, Joan, and Eran, we look for, of course, the minimum competencies, the languages, the years of experience, but something that's very important too is the core values. And I think Eran touched a bit on this, which is make sure you understand the mission of the organization and give some examples regarding that within your cover letter, as well as be able to use some of the language to kind of explain or tell your story. So if you've done volunteer work, which is important, if you've done any type of other internships or items that closely relate projects to the core value of those organizations, be able to kind of reflect that within your application as well as your cover letter. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can give a practical tip, our vacancy announcements are very detailed. They're much longer than what you would see like for regular companies on Indeed and stuff. So really read them, read those vacancy announcements. They basically were written by the manager who said, this is what I want from a person. Read them and adjust your application, your cover letter, your CV according to these needs. So the values that the manager put in, the requirements they have, the kind of person they look for, it's all in the VA. So read the VA carefully, adjust your cover letter and CV accordingly, and you improve your chance.
And if I could just add to that.
Internships are counted as half the time. So for the experience criteria, let's say minimum 2 years is required, and let's say you have a 1 year of internship, it will be counted at 6 months. So when you're putting together your number of years that is required, keep that in mind when you're calculating the minimum number of years you need to meet that experience, and make sure you factor that.
Just to add into Joan's comment about how internship experience is counted, that would depend on the organization. For UNFPA,
yeah, for the UN,
internship, yes. Yeah. For UNFPA, it wouldn't count internship experience as work experience unless it was paid work experience specifically. But just to also add to, I want to say it was Carmen's comment, or sorry, no, Eran's comment. In terms of applying for jobs at the UN, one aspect that we didn't cover maybe is competency-based interviews, which is very specific to the UN system. You can Google it, competency-based interviews. It's also available in the career guide that is posted on the UNFPA website. What often a vacancy announcement will actually list specific competencies that role requires. And what you can do is, because there's a list of competencies out there, you can see what questions people would usually ask related to that competency to have a sense of how you should respond to that question. You have to, of course, have your own example and be able to speak to that. But a competency-based interview is a different type of interview versus interviewing in the private sector. So that is something definitely to look out for when you're given the opportunity to interview.
Okay, let me add here, actually it comes from the private sector. And so if you go to YouTube, you will find a lot of career services, good examples for competency-based interviews. So you don't need to stick to what you see about the UN. It's really just the principle of how it works. And I was amazed, you know, when I tried to prepare for certain events, and I went to YouTube. There are fantastic videos there, and one can learn a lot.
If I can add something, in UNICEF, we're actually using an array of different assessment techniques. So it's not only competency-based, we're using videos now, such as Sanru presentations. We're using informal conversations with applicants and candidates, also assessment centers and tests. So become familiarized with them. And as Eva said, YouTube is great for you to research some of these methods and different techniques.
That's actually true, Carmen. We also started now doing pre-recorded interview questions, etc. Yeah, the scenery is moving, actually. We were trying out new things.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
So we use a tool called VidCruiter. It's something that is, you know, just basic video. You get a question, you have about 2 minutes to respond to that question, but it's a good way that sometimes some offices choose to shortlist by saying how quickly you respond, how you respond, and of course it demonstrates your familiarity with the language and how comfortable you are speaking to the particular role and your experiences within it.
Are we good?
I think we are good. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. I'm going to put a link in, just one more about the competency-based interviews. Thank you so much to Eva, Carmen, Eran, Joan, Lou, everybody for being here. I'm going to also post a link to our upcoming series of events as part of the Social Impact Career Series. And we will be able to send everybody the recording after this. And thank you for being here, and have a lovely weekend. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Everyone.
Good weekend, everybody.
Take care, everyone.